The air inside the supermarket was stale, laced with rot and silence. Alex Reyes stepped quietly across shattered tiles, boots scuffing against a smear of old blood. The automatic doors hung limp on broken hinges, their sensors dead long ago. A bird fluttered somewhere in the rafters, wings brushing rusted pipes. But Alex didn't look up. He moved slow, deliberate, like a ghost with weight. Shelves had long been stripped of anything obvious. Cans, dry goods, bottled water, but he still checked every aisle. Sometimes people missed things. Sometimes they dropped them in panic. And sometimes, the overlooked became the difference between dying today or tomorrow. He passed a frozen food aisle. Now just pools of congealed sludge beneath cracked glass doors. Flies buzzed lazily around something bloated near the meat section. He didn't check. If it wasn't food before, it definitely wasn't now. His reflection caught briefly in a broken freezer door. He looked 17, maybe 18, though weeks of grime and shadow had aged him past recognition. His hoodie hung loose on his thin frame. One arm held a rusted machete duct taped to reinforce the hilt. The other gripped his pack tight, knuckles white from tension. His face was gaunt, hollow-eyed, hair ragged, beard stubble patchy and unshaven. A soft rattle echoed from the back metal on tile. Cans, maybe. Wind. Or something worse. Alex froze. His breath caught in his throat. He tilted his head, listening hard. Silence. He counted to 10, then moved on. Cereal boxes, empty. Busted fridges, empty. But in the pharmacy aisle past overturned racks and water-damaged cartons, he found it a half-full bottle of antibiotics wedged behind a collapsed display. Treasure. He pocketed it quickly. As he turned to leave, he passed the liquor aisle and paused. Bottles were smashed or looted, but one dusty plastic fifth of whiskey had survived, rolling beneath a fallen price sign. He stared at it for a long moment, then left it there. Outside, the world was muted. The sky hung low, heavy with ash and a yellow-gray haze that blurred the buildings into smudges of concrete and rust. Trees stood like skeletons, stripped bare. Wind gusted fitfully, sweeping soot across the street like ghosts dragging veils. Silence wasn't safety, it was a warning. The dead moved quieter now. Alex hugged the buildings, sticking close to shadow. He'd learned the hard way that wide-open space meant exposure, meant being seen, meant being hunted. He ducked into a narrow alley, stepping over a collapsed fence and into a trash-strewn corridor of brick and grime. Here, he paused, breath catching in his throat. Memory hit like a punch. Sirens, loud and distant. The low whine of emergency broadcasts, his mother's voice sharp, trembling, yelling at him to go downstairs. The TV screen flashing red. Headlines screaming about riots and quarantine failures. His older brother coughing, wheezing, blood on his lips. Then the crash. Screams from above. Something heavy being dragged. A door slammed. His father shouting. Alex had stayed hidden in the basement, curled up behind a water heater, clutching a kitchen knife. That was 6 weeks ago. Or maybe 7. He'd stopped counting. He hadn't gone back upstairs. He didn't want to know what he'd find. Instead, he'd left, out into the city, alone, looking for food, for others, for anything. At first, the dead had been loud, moaning, fast. Now they were something else. Alex stepped over a rusted stroller and nearly gagged. A mummified corpse lay inside, too small. He kept walking, jaw clenched. He turned a corner and stopped cold. A car sat burned out in the middle of the street. Twisted frame blackened by fire. Around it, scorched pavement marked where something big had gone down. Gunfire? Molotovs? A last stand? Bullet holes peppered the building walls. A blood trail smeared the sidewalk. He walked past it without slowing. By the time he reached the schoolyard, the sun had dipped low. The swings creaked in the wind, moving without children. A body dangled from the basketball hoop, legs swaying. He didn't look up. He slipped into the janitor's shed behind the school and shut the door behind him. Inside, it smelled of oil and mildew, but it was dry, safe enough for one night. He laid his pack down, sat cross-legged and listened, nothing but wind. He took out the antibiotic bottle, rolling it between his palms. He hadn't been sick yet, but the bite on his calf from 2 weeks ago had festered before he cauterized it. Lucky, maybe. He thought about that whiskey. Maybe tomorrow. He unwrapped a protein bar, stale but edible, and chewed slowly. Somewhere in the distance, a scream echoed across the empty city. He didn't move, didn't blink. He just waited, letting the sound fade. Then slowly, he lay down against the cold wall and pulled his hood over his face, and tried to dream of anything but ash. A shriek. Young, not far. Alex shot up from his curled position in the shed, heart hammering. The scream pierced the still morning air like a flare. lighting up every part of his body with instinct. He grabbed his machete and pack, slung it over his shoulder, and bolted. Outside, the ash was falling lightly. The city looked half drowned in it, as if the world had already been buried and just didn't know it yet. The scream came again, raw, terrified. He ran past the schoolyard, past the hanged corpse, down a collapsed sidewalk swallowed by weeds and wire. The sound led him to a toy store. The glass fade had shattered long ago, shards scattered like jagged teeth. A faded bear poster hung limp on the wall, a mockery of innocence. He pushed inside, stepping over strewn dolls and broken action figures. Shelves leaned like wounded soldiers. The back wall had caved in, revealing an open alley. Then he saw her, small, tangled hair, maybe 10, sprinting, gasping. She tripped once but caught herself. Behind her, 3 infected, fast and feral, jaws unhinged like broken traps. Their eyes glowed faintly beneath soot-streaked brows. Alex didn't think. He moved. He burst through the broken display window, his yell cutting through the air. 1 infected, the closest, turned instantly and lunged. Alex swung. The machete hit hard, cracking bone and lodging deep into the creature's collar. The weight of it slammed into him, but he pushed back, yanked the blade free, and turned. "Run!" he shouted. "That way!" The girl hesitated, frozen in wide-eyed terror. "Go!" Finally, she bolted. He turned just in time to duck another lunge. The second infected clipped his shoulder with claw-like fingers. He stumbled, spun, and drove the blade up beneath its jaw. Blood black and syrupy splashed his wrist. It twitched and dropped. The third one was slower, hissing, circling. Alex backed toward the alley exit. Then it pounced. He dodged left, swung blindly, and felt resistance, not flesh. A pipe. The infected crashed into the brick wall instead. Alex didn't wait to see if it recovered. He ran. Maihi didn't know her name yet was already halfway down the alley, legs pumping like survival itself. They darted past overturned trash bins and into a street of abandoned cars. Alex spotted an open gate in a chain-link fence and led them through it. Only when the sounds behind them faded did they stop. They collapsed inside the remains of a laundromat, crouching behind dented machines. Sunlight filtered through the glassless windows. A single sock hung limp from a rusted dryer door. Alex scanned for danger. Nothing. No moaning, no dragging footsteps. He turned to the girl. She sat hugging her knees, shoulders trembling. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "I'm May." "Alex." He wiped his machete on his hoodie. "Where were you going?" She shrugged. "I don't know. I lost them. My uncle. We were looking for medicine." Alex looked at Herat, her scraped knees, bruised arms, the torn shoes. "When did you last eat?" She hesitated. "Yesterday? Maybe?" He reached into his pack and handed her half of a protein bar. She devoured it without thanks, but he didn't care. "You're lucky you screamed," he said quietly. "But next time, maybe don't." She gave him a defiant look. "I didn't mean to." He smirked, then stood. "Come on, we need to move." "Where?" "Anywhere but here." He offered her a hand. She took it. They walked slowly, cautious now. The city was quieter than before, too quiet. The kind of stillness that settled just before a thunderstorm or an ambush. Alex took them down a side street, filled with half-submerged sedans and looted storefronts. At a corner, they paused behind a flipped mail truck. Alex crouched low, signaling May to stay hidden. Ahead, 3 more infected shuffled across the avenue. These weren't the sprinting kind. Their movements were stuttered, like puppets tangled in their own strings. One dragged a severed arm behind it. Alex waited, breath shallow. The girl mirrored him, her eyes wide. The creatures passed. They moved again. A building on their left had collapsed, spilling concrete across the sidewalk like the fossilized ribs of a buried beast. May stepped too close, and a loose brick tumbled, clacking against the ground. She froze. Alex tensed. Nothing came, but the dread lingered. By mid-afternoon, they'd reached a service tunnel entrance beneath an old overpass. The tunnel led into the city's utility access grid, dark, cramped, but safe from the sky and the streets. Inside, the air was damp and cold. Water dripped steadily from rusted pipes. Rats scattered as they entered. Their footsteps echoed louder than he liked. They passed graffiti-smeared walls and a burned-out generator. The corridor narrowed into shadow. Alex used the flashlight sparingly, 1 battery left. They rested in the dark near an old maintenance hatch. Broken tools littered the floor. "Why were you alone?" Alex asked after a while. May looked away. "We were looking for antibiotics. My uncle thought the pharmacy would be untouched." "It wasn't," Alex said. "No." She rubbed her arms. "We got cornered. He told me to run. And I ran." Silence settled. "You did the right thing," Alex said. Sometimes running is all you can do. She didn't respond at first. Then he yelled. I didn't even look back. I just kept going. Her voice cracked. She wiped her nose with her sleeve. I think I heard him screaming, but I couldn't tell if it was him or one of them. Alex didn't say anything. He couldn't. There were no right words left in a world like this. Eventually, she curled up on a coil of hose, pulling her jacket tight. Alex stayed awake a little longer, watching the tunnel mouth, machete across his lap. His eyes burned from lack of sleep, but his nerves wouldn't let him rest. Outside, somewhere far off, something howled a long, rising wail. Not human, not infected either. Something else. Alex's grip tightened. The dead weren't the worst thing left out there. They stayed on the move. 2 nights passed in silence, broken only by the shuffle of ash across broken pavement, and the far-off cries that never stopped long enough to let them forget what world they lived in now. They slept in Turnstone, always awake, machete ready. May had stopped asking questions. Her silences grew heavier with each passing hour, like they were weighing her down from the inside. By the 3rd day, hunger clawed at their ribs again. The last protein bar had been split the night before, and their water was nearly gone. Alex kept pushing forward, leading May through alleys where trees had grown out of fissures in the concrete, and vines strangled the bones of old cars. Then came the voices. Not moans, not growls, human. Alex pulled May behind a broken bus husk and peered out. A group of men in tactical gear paced the intersection ahead. Radios crackled at their belts. Their uniforms were mismatched, some military, some private security, all reinforced with scraps of Kevlar and duct tape. One man wore sunglasses, even in the gray gloom. Another held an assault rifle like it was an extension of his arm. Alex's breath caught. He hadn't seen this many living people in weeks. One of them spotted movement. Hey, he barked. You two! Don't be stupid. Hands up. Alex didn't move at first, but then the rifle was lifted. He raised his hands. So did May. They were marched in silence. No questions, no answers. Just boots crunching glass. And the tension of a barrel between Alex's shoulder blades. The building was an old bank. Boarded windows, reinforced doors, graffiti smeared across the outer wall. But inside it was almost surreal. Bunks lined the marble lobby. A barrel fire burned beside the shattered teller stations. The vault was sealed but repurposed. Someone's private quarters, judging by the guards posted there. People moved in patterns, watching, working, whispering. Everyone armed, everyone nervous. Their captors led them to the man in charge, Riker. He stood near the center of the room, leaning over a scratched table covered in maps and ration ledgers. Broad shoulders, crooked smile. His eyes were cold, calculating. New blood, he said, glancing over May just a moment too long. Where you from? Alex didn't answer. Smart, Riker said, amused. Doesn't matter anyway. You're here now. They were given food, canned peaches and stale crackers. Alex ate carefully, warily. May devoured hers without speaking. Riker came over later. Here's the deal, he said. You follow the rules, you stay. You contribute. You earn your keep, you break rules. He tapped the butt of his pistol. Well, that depends. Alex nodded. But his eyes never left Riker's. That night, Alex didn't sleep. Not fully. He laid on his bunk near the edge of the room. May beside him. Others snored. The barrel fire popped. Somewhere outside, the dead howled. And then another sound. A scream. Human. Short. Cut off. Alex sat up. No one else stirred. Or they pretended not to. He waited, heart hammering. Nothing more came. Just the crackle of fire and the rhythm of distant breathing. The next day, they were given jobs. Menial, sorting supplies, cleaning gear, helping repair broken fencing. Alex didn't mind the work, it gave him time to observe. May was kept close, watched by one of Riker's Menile, with a thin beard and too many teeth in his smile. Alex hated the way he looked at her. Hated more that he wasn't the only one. He started to explore the compound quietly, mapping it in his mind. The bank's upper floors were sealed off. Lower, in the basement, he found something else. Cages, 4 of them, one empty. One filled with boxes and blankets, one occupied. A woman. She was maybe 30, maybe younger, starved thin, bruises across her arms, a rag tied over her mouth, eyes that met his with a kind of resigned pleading. Alex backed away slowly, his stomach churned. Bile rose in his throat. He didn't need to ask what the cages were for. He didn't need to hear more screams. When he got back to the lobby, May was gone. Panic gripped him by the throat. He asked around, quiet. Then louder. No one answered. Eyes slid away. Hands stayed close to weapons. Then she appeared, coming out of the vault. Eli walking behind her, too close. May looked down, Alex's jaw clenched. He knew then. Knew it was only a matter of time. That night, he didn't sleep. Again. He sat upright in the bunk, blade across his lap, staring into the shadows. Planning. Watching. The fire burned low. He waited until the rotation changed. Until the sentry by the vault door stepped away for coffee. Alex moved like smoke, through the shadows, past the snoring men, down into the basement. The woman in the cage looked up again. Her eyes flickered with surprise. Alex crouched beside the lock, picked it with a knife edge. He'd learned the trick from his brother. Back before the world died, it clicked open. She didn't speak, just pressed her hands against the cage door in disbelief. He helped her out. She stumbled but caught herself. He handed her a blade, a kitchen knife he'd swiped from the mess. Then they climbed. He reached May first. She was sleeping near the fire again. Eli beside her, too close. Alex stepped over, machete in hand. He didn't speak. Eli's eyes opened just in time to see the blade. It didn't take long. Screams followed. Confusion. Gunfire. But by then, they were already moving. The woman Jessa, she said, had slipped out through the side stairwell. May followed, still blinking sleep from her eyes. Alex brought up the rear. Chaos swallowed the bank behind them, and outside, in the cold gray of dawn, the infected stirred. The fire, the noise it drew them. Dozens, hundreds. The last thing Alex saw before they vanished into the alley was Riker, standing atop a desk, screaming orders. Then a corpse lunged and bit his throat. Alex didn't smile, but he didn't look back either. It started with fire. May stood in the kitchen, eyes on the rusted gas line Riker's men had repurposed into a makeshift stove. It hissed like a snake behind the stacked cans and grease-streaked counters. She could feel her heartbeat in her throat, smoke already curled from a pan deliberately left burning. She'd waited for the perfect moment when two guards were yelling at each other over a crate of miscounted rations, their backs to her. She dropped a lit match onto the oil-stained rags beneath the counter and stepped back. The explosion wasn't cinematic. It was a dull whomp, like something inside the walls had inhaled too much and exhaled flame. Orange light bloomed across the far side of the compound, and screams followed. Alarms began to wail, a jury-rigged system of bells and clanging pipes. People rushed to contain the blaze. Panic spread like gasoline. Alex moved through the smoke. He hugged the shadows, face wrapped in a torn shirt. The keys jingled softly and his hand lifted from a sleeping guard the night before. One chance. No second takes. He slipped down the hall to the basement, each step carefully measured. A figure ran past him without noticing, shouting something about the armory. The cages waited. Jessa was awake, curled like a coil of wire. Her bruises looked darker in the dim light. Alex unlocked her cell. She stared at him for a heartbeat. Then she stood. No words were exchanged, just resolve. They climbed the stairwell, sticking to corners. Smoke choked the upper floors. Flames licked the walls near the barracks. People ran, some with weapons, others with bare hands, all of them shouting. Alex spotted May by the mess hall, crouched behind a table, eyes wide. He motioned. She ran to him. Then a voice rang out over the noise. "You, Riker!" His voice cut through the smoke like a blade. He stood at the far end of the hall, pistol drawn. His vest was half-buckled, hair wild, face slick with sweat. "You little bastard!" he charged. Alex shoved May behind him. Riker closed the distance with surprising speed. The first punch landed on Alex's ribs, knocking him back into a wall. The second he blocked. The third he returned with a headbutt that made Riker stagger. They fought, fists, elbows, kicks. Riker slammed Alex into a column. Alex stabbed him in the leg with a broken table knife. They rolled across the floor, crashing into overturned chairs. Jessa leapt in, swinging a crowbar. Riker took it in the shoulder, bellowed, then backhanded her into the wall. Alex used the opening. He drove his machete low, not clean, not smooth. A ragged slice across Riker's gut. Riker howled. Alex stabbed again, and again. Riker slumped, eyes wide, mouth bubbling blood. He died staring straight at Alex. Alex didn't wait. He grabbed May's hand. Jessa staggered upright. "Come on!" The back of the building was coming apart, flames licking through the supply room, smoke billowing out of busted vents. Then came the groans. Low, wet, multiplied. The infected had arrived, drawn by fire, by sound, by blood. The rear barricade, once fortified with desks, and welded metal buckled under pressure. Screams rose as the dead poured in. Limbs flailed, teeth snapped, flesh tore. Alex ran. They weaved through the chaos, past dying guards, past burning crates, past the collapsed roof. May tripped once, he yanked her up. Jessa limped but stayed upright. One infected lunged from behind a desk, its jaw torn open like a ruined hinge. Alex struck it midair, the machete crunching into bone. Another grabbed his shoulder. Teeth sank in. Pain bloomed. Alex roared and smashed its skull with the flat of his blade. Blood ran down his arm, but he didn't stop. He gritted his teeth and ran. Out the side exit, down the alley, through the ash-filled street. Behind them, the fortress collapsed into flame and screams. They ran until their lungs felt like sandpaper, until the sounds of death were just echoes. Finally, they stopped. A crumbling hardware store, shelves half-burned, windows long gone. The three of them slumped to the ground. Alex fell against the wall, clutching his shoulder. Blood seeped between his fingers. May looked at him, tears welling. "You're bleeding," she said. "I know." He didn't let go of the machete. Jessa tore a strip from her shirt and pressed it against the wound. "Don't let go," she said. "You hold on, you hear me?" He nodded faintly. "I'm not dying here," but he didn't look convinced. They spent the night in the store, too tired to speak, too frightened to sleep deeply. Every creak of the structure, every groan of distant undead sent adrenaline surging again. May sat beside him the entire time. Her small hand clutched around the base of his machete like she could will it to keep him alive. By morning, Alex was feverish. Jessa checked the wound again. No streaking yet, no black veins. That's something. But Alex saw the doubt in her eyes. They took turns scouting. Jessa watched the front while May scavenged, food from the broken shelves, 2 cans of beans, and a dented tin of powdered milk. Alex drifted in and out of consciousness. He dreamed of his brother's voice, of their basement hideout, of sunlight through a cracked window. He dreamed of a world with laughter in it. He woke up crying. "I saw him," he whispered. May looked at him, hollow-eyed. "Who? My brother." He was laughing. "Hey, he said it was almost over. Do you believe him?" Alex stared at the ceiling. "I don't know." That night, more infected passed through the streets. Jessa killed 2 quietly. One she didn't see in time, it nearly caught May. Alex tried to stand, to help, but the world swam. "Stay down." Jessa hissed, "You'll only slow us down." He hated how true that was. But in the silence that followed, as they crouched behind the counter, May whispered something to him. "I'm not leaving you." He wanted to tell her she had to, that she had to survive, no matter what. But he couldn't find the words. The next morning, his fever broke. It didn't disappear, but it broke. His breath came easier. His head cleared. The wound looked bad, but not death bad. They moved again. Slow. Careful. But they moved. Jessa took point. May stayed close. Alex shuffled behind them, machete still in hand. The world around them had grown quieter again. Not safe. Never safe, but less on fire. They headed for the river. Jessa had heard rumors. Old ones about boats. About people still ferrying survivors. Maybe it was true. Maybe not. Hope was a cruel thing. But sometimes it was the only thing. They walked until dusk, and when the sun dipped behind the ruined skyline, Alex found himself whispering the same words over and over. "I'm not dying here. Not tonight, not yet." They collapsed in an abandoned church hours later. The building had once been a place of sanctuary, of warmth and song. Now, it was a skeleton of faith, half collapsed, cold, and forgotten. Stained glass windows still clung to their iron frames like bruised skin, fractured into shards that painted dying light across the dusty pews in fragments of red, blue, and gold. The scent of old incense clung faintly to the air, mingling with mildew, ash, and the distant copper tang of blood. Dust motes swirled in slow circles through collapsing beams of twilight. They'd forced open the side door, its hinges screaming protest into the silence. Inside, time seemed frozen. Prayer books lay scattered across the floor, their pages curled and yellowing. A crucifix hung askew above the pulpit, its wooden Christ split by a crack down the torso. Candle holders sat melted and blackened, long since extinguished. Jessa was gone, vanished without sound or trace. Maybe it was her way of giving them a chance to survive without her slowing them down. Maybe she just couldn't bear to stay. The last Alex remembered was her moving through the smoke at sunrise, silhouette blurred by ash. A glance over her shoulder that held nothing but quiet resolve. May didn't ask where she went. She just dropped beside Alex and began to unpack the satchel quiet, efficient. A canteen, gauze, the last of the rations. Alex leaned against a collapsed pew, jaw clenched as pain flared in his shoulder. The bite still throbbed. May gently tore back the fabric of his shirt, revealing the purpling wound. She cleaned it with trembling hands. The alcohol burned like fire. "It's not deep," she said, the words too fragile to feel certain. He grimaced. "It's not infected?" She glanced at the skin, then at his face. No gray veins. No fever, just a bite. He breathed out, staring at the fractured ceiling above. Shafts of dying light streamed through the rafters, casting long shadows over broken pews and the cracked altar. Could have sworn I felt something, like it was inside me already. May didn't respond. Instead, she reached into her coat and pulled out a photograph, worn, water-stained, the corners frayed. She passed it to him. A man and woman stood smiling in a field. The sky behind them was impossibly blue. A little girl clung to the woman's hand, beaming with crooked teeth. My parents, she said softly. They didn't make it past week 1. Alex studied the photo, then her. You held on to this the whole time? May shrugged. You helped me, even when it was stupid. His lip curled into something half between a smirk and a wince. Wasn't stupid. They fell into silence, sharing warmth beneath the remnants of what once had been sacred. The church groaned in its bones as night swallowed the last light of day. Outside, the wind shifted through the broken trees and distant buildings like a mourning hymn. May curled beside him beneath a shredded blanket, her eyes locked on the shattered stained glass of St. Michael. His sword was still visible, painted in reds that now looked more like blood. Do you think anyone's left? She asked. Alex closed his eyes. People? Yeah. Good ones? Maybe. She said nothing more. Her breathing slowed. She drifted into sleep. But Alex couldn't. Not yet. Pain still rolled through his shoulder. His thoughts refused to settle. He remembered Riker's face, the fight, the blood, the moment everything almost fell apart. He remembered May screaming, Jessa bleeding, the horde tearing through fire and metal. He remembered what it felt like to kill a man who deserved it, and how it still didn't feel like victory. Eventually, exhaustion overtook him, but sleep didn't bring rest. He dreamt of his brother again, of laughter on a dock, of water rippling with light, of fish flopping in a bucket. They spoke without words. His brother just looked at him and smiled. When he woke, the light had returned, pale, cold, but there. He sat up slowly, shoulders stiff and aching. May was already awake, standing near the front of the church, staring out through a missing panel of glass. He joined her. The world outside was draped in fog. Trees stripped bare, clawed at the sky like skeletal fingers. The street was littered with rusted cars, bones, twisted rebar. But in the distance, past the broken rooftops and jagged skyline, something stirred. Smoke, not black and wild like fire, but gray, controlled, purposeful. And movement, not chaos, not frenzy, marching. People. He blinked hard. Mai's voice barely rose above a whisper. You see it too? Yeah, they packed what little they had left. May wrapped the photo in cloth and tucked it safely into her coat. Alex checked his machete. Still stained. Still whole. Then they climbed. The bell tower creaked with every step. Rusted nails jutted from each support. They climbed past old ropes, past a dead bird's nest, past where the bell had once hung before crashing to the floor years ago. At the top, the wind hit them. Cold and sharp, it carried the scent of ash, pine, and faint smoke. The church stood taller than most of the ruins nearby. From the belfry, they could see for miles. The smoke rose in neat lines. Cooking fires, signal flares, maybe both. They saw tents, shadows, figures walking perimeter paths. It was a camp, fortified, real. Alex's heart thudded. He turned to May. We keep walking. She looked up at him. No smile, just a nod. But in her eyes, something brighter than fear. A flicker. They descended. Back into the church. Back into the broken world. As they stepped outside, the morning greeted them with silence and light. Not the warm light of old days, but something softer. Diffused through ash and cloud, pale and ghost-like. The street was quiet. The cold wind stirred empty cans and faded signs. A tattered flag hung limp from a rusted pole, its stars faded to near white. But they walked. Every footstep felt like a decision, every block another test. They passed a burned-out clinic, the smell of old chemicals still lingering. A crushed school bus lay on its side near a gutted pharmacy. Bones littered the sidewalks like autumn leaves. Alex moved slower now, one hand pressed to his shoulder. May walked beside him, silent, alert. They didn't speak much, but they didn't have to. Each ruin told a story. Each corner held memory. A world that had been lost, piece by piece, and yet here they were, still walking, still hoping. They camped that night in the shell of a gas station. May lit a small fire in a metal drum using torn comic books and cracked seat cushions. They shared the last can of beans and half a candy bar that had somehow survived untouched. Alex sat back against the wall, watching the embers. Do you think we'll be welcome? May asked. He didn't answer right away. Then I don't know, but I'd rather die trying than sit and rot. She nodded slowly. They stayed up long after the fire went out, just listening to the world. A dog barked somewhere far off, a human sound. Alex allowed himself to believe for the first time in a long time that maybe tomorrow could bring something new. Not salvation, but something. They slept light, and when the first glow of morning lit the sky, they walked again, toward the smoke, toward the people, toward whatever came next.